The Leadership in Law podcast is powered by Law Marketing Zone. Transform your firm's digital presence with expert marketing solutions tailored exclusively for attorneys at lawmarketingzone.com.
Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Evan Poling, to the show today. Evan, the founder of bizretire.com, has a background in financial crimes investigation and has reviewed the financials of hundreds of businesses. Having learned that 80% of businesses never sell, Evan is seeking to disrupt a 250-year-old industry. Evan founded bizretire.com in 2023 to help small businesses connect to business buyers and both to advisors. I'm excited to have you here, Evan. Welcome.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your journey to bizretire.com.
Yeah, I mean, like most journeys, we want it to be like you're running on a track and it's nice and straight to the goal. But like most journeys, there's some hills and valleys and mountains and all that and in between. And so, really quick, I started out very young watching my father build businesses, finding some short-term success in some of those, but not really seeing long-term success in those businesses. And so grew up around a business owner who was trying to make it work. And, he was just doing like everyone else. You buy something, you sell it, you have a product or service. And so that was a real great learning experience. In college, I got a degree in accounting, financial economics, ended up in the financial crime investigation world, like I had mentioned to you, like you had mentioned in the intro. And so that was a really cool opportunity for me to actually get into the nitty gritty of the financials of businesses. I'm looking at people's personal accounts. I'm looking at their business accounts. I'm seeing how they're spending money. I'm learning about industries and trying to reconcile, is this activity actual activity that needs to happen in this industry, or is some criminal activity going on here? And so really studying those things. That's a little bit about my business background. Started watching a lot of, videos on how to buy and sell businesses and got really interested and intrigued. As far as my leadership journey goes specifically, I have opportunities to lead as like a martial arts instructor within the military, and just leading youth groups in my church and things like that. And so a lot of opportunities to get to know people and to lead in those capacities as well.
Fantastic. So the military certainly sets you up for leadership. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you're talking about 80% of businesses go unsold, that's sad, because you build this thing, this is your baby, and you're working in it, and then what happens? It just closes, or succession planning? What types of things have you experienced?
Yeah, so there's a statistic, I heard someone say this, and it was really profound, that 100% of business owners will exit their business. And, I don't know about you, but when someone says 100% or it always happens, I'm kind of leery, right? Like that doesn't, but you either die, you get sick, you get divorced, you have a disagreement, or you can't pay the bills, right? And so your businesses close the door and you exit that business one way or another. Like you will always do that. And it's actually more prevalent in taxes. Less people actually pay their taxes than exit their business, but few people actually plan for it. And to the statistic that 80% of businesses never sell, that statistic is real. And these are profitable businesses. These are businesses that have been in business for decades. So these are solid businesses. The problem is that 90% of businesses are under $1 million in revenue. And so most of these businesses are really small businesses. So these EBITDA numbers, the final profit margins are, $500,000 and under in some cases. And so what ends up happening is you have a small business with a small business owner, and that business owner is kind of the jack of all trades. They know everything that goes on in that business. They know how to run it. And they're so hard, they're so stuck working in the business that they don't know the tools required to actually make that business a standalone entity. And so the way I like to look at it is they don't have a business, they have a job. And so what ends up happening, a business buyer looks at the business and maybe the business owner making $250,000 a year or $400,000 a year, which is really good money, right? But the problem is that a business buyer is looking at this business owner, they're working 80 hours a week. And so if the buyer wants the business to run and operate on itself, 80 hours a week for a business owner like that is like 10 full-time employees, right? As far as hiring them and managing them and getting all these little things going. And so by the time you factor in who you have to hire and how you're going to operate and run that business, the problem is it's no longer profitable because that business really stood up with the expertise of that one or two, we call it key man risk, someone operating and running that business. And so then the buyer is now faced with the choice, I can be that operator. But again, that business buyer is not going to have 40 years of experience like that business owner. And so what that business buyer is essentially saying is now I'm going to take out a $400, so if it's making $400,000 profit, maybe it's worth $800,000. I'm going to take out an $800,000 loan to now go work an 80-hour a week job, at which I won't make the same amount of money as this owner. I'm going to put my house up as collateral. And so in most cases, it just really comes out to where that it is not worth it, right? And so it's a good business, it's sitting on the market, and then no one really wants to buy it.
I see. Yeah, that's the whole thing about trying to remove yourself from the business so you have an entity to sell.
Yeah.
And that is that one of the biggest misconceptions that business owners have is how to position to think about starting to sell their business?
Oh, absolutely. Because you got to think about it. Everything's all perspective. If you're an owner and you're working within your business, you're seeing the money that you're making. You see the lifestyle that you have. You see, like, as an owner, you know how to do the things and you do them efficiently. And so it's not a big deal for you. It's like, yeah, you just go work, make $400K, no big deal, right? This is how you do it. And but that's taking that person 40 years to get to that point. And so their perspective is like, I have a profitable business. It makes a lot of money. We've been around for 40 years. Everyone knows who we are. Like, a lot of them, like, I don't advertise. And so everyone knows us. And so the problem is in their minds, like, I got an asset here. I got something that produces money, but they don't realize that they're the asset. And,
right.
That's the reason why people invest in the stock market, because you literally just take money, you throw it in the stock market and you get a return. There's no money, there's no effort involved in that transaction. The problem with a business is that it's not like that. There's a lot of work involved. And so, tying it back to lawyers, a lot of lawyers are like this too. And like the thing for lawyers is they work their time and they get money in return. If they're an expert, they charge more money for their time. But here's the thing, what happens if a lawyer gets cancer? What happens if, something happens to a lawyer? They can't produce money. So at the end of the day, even firms with partnerships, you can have some leeway there because you can have an entity built out. But even then, you have people that are trading time for money. There's really no enterprise value if the people are not within that enterprise. And so, I think lawyers are in a very similar situation, right? With what they're doing. Business owners working, getting time in and then money out. Lawyers are working, time in, money out, and it's the same thing. At the end of the day, what is the end goal? How are you creating something that will work without you and be a standalone entity?
And are you thinking, instead of, say, the names on the wall, having a law firm group and building the brand of the law group instead of the brand of the actual attorney?
Yeah, I think so. Right. So there is obviously the brand element, because the name on the wall is just kind of like a logo. If you think about it that way, it's just an image. Even though it's a name, it represents something. What it represents is the brand. And if those names represent people, when those people leave, that law firm is not that anymore. And so the question becomes is like, how do you build something out? I think I saw an interview with a lawyer. Gosh, I forget his name. He's like a billionaire, but he does a lot of the accidents. But actually, I think it's in his name too, but he's got a bunch of sons running it. And so it's not necessarily just him. And so there is some life beyond him because he has more lawyers with that same name. But yeah, law firms are so representative of a people that, if I don't know, you're the expert here. Can a law firm actually have a name or a brand that doesn't incorporate the name of the people? Because I think the people within the organization want to have their name on that. That's kind of like the golden standard. And so, like, how do you hey, we're taking that away, but you should still strive and earn and work your way and work hard your way up the ladder to, build this thing. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, and I've spoken to a few attorneys that choose to make a firm that has a name, not their name, so that it's also positioned to bring in partners or grow and be more than necessarily a lifestyle business. But then here's some of the larger ones with one or two names on the building, and they have dozens of attorneys. So it's a little interesting. But let's jump over to talking about those 80% of businesses that never sell. How can we position a small business to be able to sell? What are the top challenges that derail a sale whenever someone comes in and says, hey, I like your small business and I'd like to buy that. Are you willing to sell? What are the things that kind of pop up?
Yeah, the biggest thing is data that's accurate, right? Because a lot of times the owners say, yeah, this thing is profitable. It runs well. And a lot of times the owners kind of have the feeling of it. They kind of know intuitively that it's a good business, but a buyer doesn't care about how you feel. They don't care about oh yeah, it's been great for you. What they care about is there numbers in the books that actually really support the claims that are being made? Because it's like buying a car, right? You go into a parking lot and it's like, hey, I got a great car for you, but I can't tell you how many tires is on it. I don't know how many miles is on it. I don't know if the windows are tinted or not. I don't know what year it is, but I promise you it's a great car. It runs well, but I don't know any of the data. You'd be like, well, I don't want to buy that car. I want to know, tell me the statistics of the car. Like I want to break down and understand what it is that I'm buying. And I think the books is huge. And then you have owners too, because what happens is they'll use the business to take as many tax breaks as possible. It's legal tax breaks, or sometimes they kind of stretch that a little bit. And then their tax returns are not reflecting the books. And so they're taking these shortcuts, and there's a lot of well, yeah, it's because I deducted my lake house as a business expense, and I deducted my truck as a business expense. I don't use it 10% for the business, and they're trying to add back all these things or deduct them from the value, and it just gets kind of messy. And it's like, well, if you're willing to cheat the government, who could throw you in a jail, how much more are you lying about to me as the buyer, right? So that's huge. Books are by far the number one thing that will derail a business sale. And I mean, I can talk about more. I don't want to jump too much.
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So in your forensic crime, figuring out the crime investigation, are you, how to ask this question? It's obvious it's really important to have your books ready for a serious buyer. How do you get them started in that? So you've got a small business owner that's done exactly what you said. He's played the game and done all of that, but now is ready to exit. How do you fix that? Or how do you make the book something the buyer would actually be interested in looking at?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no easy answer. First thing is talk to an accountant. There's two types of accountants. There's ones that think that the government is owed everything and they want to try to extract as much money, and there's accountants that work for business owners. Find really good accountants that work with business owners that really know what they do, probably industry specific to what you're doing, so they can be an expert in what they do, the work they do for you. But so you can go back and redefine the books and make them better. So you can do a retroactive kind of audit review and resubmit tax forms and things like that. Maybe the owner ends up paying more taxes because they, it's kind of scary, but yeah, you go back and pay some taxes to get everything straightened out. If possible, that may not even be a reality. I'm not sure. The second is you start at day zero. And so if your buyer needs 3 years of clean books, you got to run your business for 3 more years and doing it the right way. So those are really the only two options, and both kind of suck.
That's true. Having to redo your taxes is a pain. So if I'm thinking about selling my business, how far in advance should I be preparing?
Well, they said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is tomorrow. So I would say either one of those two options. Start planning 20 years ago, or start planning today. It sounds simple, but it really comes down. Because, like anything in life, the more that you prepare for it, the more that you work towards it, the better it's going to be when you reach the result.
And I've recently been talking with a tax planning CPA that has a completely different process than, say, your CPA that files your taxes. And it was really interesting that the ones that are strategic planners know these different tax planning rules that will save you taxes that do not impact an asset to be sold, because it's all within the law. It's not gray area. So that's not going to be a red flag to a buyer.
Yeah. I mean, there's stretching the tax code, and then there's like using the tax code legally and properly for the right things. Yeah. So definitely want to do it by the book as much as possible. Doesn't mean you got to pay Uncle Sam the most money possible, but yeah, definitely talk to an expert.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you find when it comes to connecting buyers with sellers and the advisors doing that, how do you find that emotions and personal attachment play into the whole getting in the way of a successful exit?
Yeah, it's huge. It's really huge. There's a lot that goes into that. I mean, the seller has one thing in mind. They have an identity in the business, how they feel, how the business is. They've been in control of everything their whole entire life. They've told people what to do, how to do it. They've made decisions. And then when a buyer that knows next to nothing in comparison to the wisdom and knowledge of this person that's worked for 40 years tells them that their business isn't valuable, I mean, most people are going to not take that well. Like, hey, it's because, but the problem is, again, buyers are looking at numbers. They're looking at, can I finance this deal? Am I not going to lose everything that I own? Can I actually hire or learn this 80-hour work week? Can I, are the suppliers going to like me? There's a lot of like handshake deals that go on between owners and suppliers and customers and things like this. And when they're not the face of the business anymore, the people are going to leave, and so there's a lot of fears from the buyer side, right? Because they're not going to perform at the same level as the business owner. But the business owner is actually looking at it from where they're performing at and what they've been, what they're doing. And so there's definitely a mismatch of intentions. And then if you throw in a third party like a business broker, it just gets even worse. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I created Biz Retire. But, business broker filters through the buyers, and they're trying to find the buyer that maximizes their commission. And so the business broker is aligned with the seller, trying to get the most money. But the problem is the business broker is not always aligned with finding the best buyer. And so, like, for example, if you build a business for 40 years and you find a buyer, let's say a private equity firm, and they don't care about Susie who's worked in the business for 30 years, and they buy the business, and they fire all the employees and, roll it up into a larger company. Well, kind of the legacy of that person, that business owner, that, who cares, right? Like, so that owner built something, they, paying these salaries to people in the community, have had a good name in the community, and next thing you know, they're the enemy. No one in the community likes them anymore. The community that they lived and worked in for 40 years, because now they betrayed the community by selling it to this big person. And so, and again, the business broker is not completely aligned with the owner or the buyer, right? And so then, or if you have the business broker doing all the work, which, I mean, if you're an owner working 80 hours a week, you can't talk to, 1,000 buyers or 100 buyers. And so then a lot of times the sellers only kind of met them in passing, or maybe never met them at all. And they meet them at the closing table and like, well, that buyer's a jerk. I'm not giving my business to that a-hole. I don't like that. Yeah. And so there's a lot of like personalities. There's a lot of different ideas on what this looks like. There's different levels of experience. And so it's definitely a messy situation.
Hey, lawyers, are you losing cases to firms online that aren't even better attorneys than you? They're just better at marketing. Most law firms are nearly invisible online. If you're not showing up in the Google Map pack, if your ads aren't converting, or if you're constantly waiting on referrals, you're leaving money on the table. At Law Marketing Zone, we've helped clients go from 0 to over 20 cases a month. And we put our top strategies into a quick, free checklist, the Law Firm Marketing Fix. 10 ways to stop losing clients online. Download it right now for free. You'll discover the biggest mistakes most firms are making and how to fix them fast. Then, if you're ready, book a free strategy call and we'll walk through the gaps in your current marketing. Don't wait for referrals. Start attracting your ideal clients today. Click to get the checklist now.
That's amazing. And so I agree with the business broker thing. So when you're thinking about the M&A, or merger and acquisition selling, what are some of the common mistakes that these owners make when they choose advisors and brokers and those firms to work with?
I'm of the opinion that smaller business owners, for the most part, don't need that. So I typically think like brokers probably anywhere from like 0 to 5 million ish, maybe more or less, give or take a couple million. And then you have your M&As that probably take to certain margin. And then you have like the really big deals, the multi, 100 million plus deals that are like broker, what is it called? Bank brokers or whatever they're called. I can't think of the right word. And so M&A specifically, I don't deal with a lot of businesses in that space, but for brokers, one of the reasons I created Biz Retires, I don't think it's fair that a business owner pays anywhere from 5 to 20% of 40 years worth of work to have someone sell their business, especially for some of these small businesses where it's just like a few employees. I think that they should hire a business broker, maybe $200 an hour, or an attorney. And it's kind of getting back to the attorneys, where the attorney will advise them through the sale process. And so maybe the owner ends up paying, $2,000 or $5,000, to get their business sold versus, hey, here's a 10% commission check on $1 million. Here's $100,000. Because the brokers are really just listing that on a platform. They are fielding through buyers. I mean, there is a little bit of work in there, but that's 50 to 70% of the work, which our platform really pretty much does automatically for free. And so I'm just not a big fan of brokers. There's a lot of brokers that are great and they'll stay in business and they'll always be great at what they do, but there's a lot of business brokers that are not great at what they do. Sorry.
Yeah, that good
I didn't mean to
So,
on business.
no, Sam, let's get back to how, like you mentioned, how attorney, that you can bring an attorney in. Obviously, hiring your own attorney instead of a business broker is going to be extremely more cost effective. Plus, they're on your side. You don't have to question motives or any of that kind of thing. How do you work it out so it's like an add-along service if an attorney has a client that's already a business owner and moving into that, helping them sell the business?
Yeah, I think what you're kind of getting at, and correct me wrong, is like what opportunities do attorneys have in this? Is that So I think there's 3 tranches. There's the pre-sale, there's during the sale, and there's post-sale law work, right? Pre-sale, I'll just really quick, I'll touch on some points. I think pre-sale, one of the things I was talking about before was the relationships, and so a lot of times they're handshake deals. There's an agreement, and so having legal documents in place that solidify the supplier relationships, the provide, like where they're providing a service, the rental agreement maybe that was written, or the contracts for employees, right? So any kind of like contractual thing that solidifies the business and makes it more locked in. So when the buyer comes in and says, yeah, well, when so-and-so leaves, I'm still going to have that same rate for my supplies. Like Mr. Supplier isn't going to jack up the prices because he knew Bob, but he doesn't like me because I'm a millennial, right? And so now he's going to jack it up 10%. And so anywhere where, and like I said, the contractual piece lock in, and that's one aspect, one thing to think about. During the sale, it could be, there's IOIs, letter of intents, things like this, where the attorney can help evaluate, is this a good offer from the buyer? And then also there's due diligence. And so what are the legalities of due diligence? What are the confidentiality agreements with, going through the books and learning trade secrets? And then, closing the deal, how do you transfer assets to make sure that it's in the buyer's name? And that, there's horror stories where, credit cards are left in the old business owner's name, and now they're legally responsible for the new business owners are running them up for business expenses. And then, now the credit card company's suing the prior business owner because it wasn't properly transferred, the accounts, maybe it's a line of credit with a supplier or, that kind of thing. And so making sure that the transfer of assets is complete, and that's where the attorney come in the sale portion. And then post-sale, a lot of times you have like non-compete agreements. So how do you enforce legal contracts where the owner sells you a business and they open up a shop right down the road and start stealing all their old customers? Like how do you fight through some of that? Maybe there was an agreement where the business buyer would take it in and then they would pay based upon the profits. And there was like a percentage, margin that comes out. And maybe they're not paying that anymore, or maybe the business is going down and the buyer can't pay it and they need a lawyer to represent them against the seller, right? And so there's a lot of legal things that happen with these transfer assets that are really important. And so, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much legal work that can be done.
I think we've all heard some of those horror stories where some asset, whether it be the actual lease of the building or trucks or something like that, for some reason were never changed over the name and the old owner still owns that. And it's, yeah. So hiring your own attorney is definitely, and reviewing the legal risk, and especially you're bringing someone in, if it's your hometown where you've been for 40 years, you want to make sure that it's a smooth transfer. Your attorney can help you do that.
Yeah. Now, attorneys can also botch a deal too. So, buyer comes in and attorney writes his covenant with all these restrictions and makes it locks it in for the owner, which is what, they're being paid to do. And the buyer's like, that's too restrictive. I'm just not interested in the sale. And so there is a balance. And so having an attorney that has kind of this experience or understanding that, you could really he's hiring you, owners not only hiring you to protect their legal risk, but to make sure that it's a smooth transition. And so, the goal is not to be a pit bull, but to, protect where you can. And so there is a balance, and it does take the right attorney to have that foreknowledge to know how to do that and do it well.
And how does BizRetire fit into that as if I'm a business owner, and what types of things can you help me with?
Yeah, so we're an online marketplace. The big goal is connection. That's the end goal. I connect owners directly to buyers without commissions, and so that's kind of not unique. There's a lot of other platforms that do that. The uniqueness of my platform is that our buyers actually pay money to have that direct conversation with owners. And what that really does is these are buyers that are really serious about buying a business. There is kind of this movement in culture right now. There's a lot of social media marketers on YouTube and everything talking about buying a business with no money down. And, the context of the one-man business owner, it makes sense why you can't sell your business, so you have to do a no money down seller financing deal where the seller is kind of the bank to the buyer. And it may make sense, right? And so there are a lot of risk with that. But all that to say is there's a lot of buyers that think that they can buy a business with no money down. And so they're kind of window shopping. And so what is happening is they talk to an 80-hour work week owner and, hey, let me see your books. Let me see this. They have no financing in order. They have no intent to buy. They have no experience in the industry. They really end up wasting the time of the owner. And it really kind of becomes a bad process. And so that's one of the risks of selling on a marketplace, right, where there's free members. And so we charge the members. And so one of those members will I'm never going to pay. I can do it for free over here. It's all right, you go over there and do it for free. But then we're trying to get owners that are not anywhere else. They're not with a broker. They're not on another platform. And so for the buyers, it makes sense because the other platform has 250,000 free buyers. And so you're competing against 250,000 other people that are also wasting the time of those owners. Those owners are exhausted. They're tired of the sales process. They're bitter. And so it's hard to buy a business under those conditions. And so the buyers win, the owners win because they know that the sellers are serious. And so we kind of do that connection in a way that a broker would, but we give the owner full power to get to know the buyer if they're a good fit for the marketplace, the community, the skill set for the business. And so then there's a relationship that's built, and that relationship allows them to get through some of the hurdles like hey, your books are not in order, let's work with you, or hey, I don't know, you don't have contracts in place, let's work with you getting those contracts. Because now these two people like each other, they want to facilitate, they want to work together for the mutual benefit of each other. They're creating a micro community, which I think allows for more sales of the business. We don't facilitate, I don't choose the buyer, I don't talk to the owner, I don't do anything. So you have two adults that are intelligent, and I say, hey, look, if you guys need some experts, you guys need a lawyer, you guys need a CEPA, certified exit planning advisor, you guys need a financial planner. You guys probably should get all these things, but if you don't, fine. But if you do need them, I can connect you with people that will help you. And so that's kind of the goal, because I don't think business owners should pay to sell their business.
No, I agree. I love that. You've curated a community of like-minded individuals. I have something valuable. You want to buy something valuable. And if we need advisors, you've got that as well.
Yeah.
So attorneys can sign up on your platform to be that advisor, or CPAs or that sort of thing.
Well, they can reach out to me. What I like to do is I like to get some references. I like to understand what kind of clients they want to work with, where their expertise lie. And that way I can actually, like if I'm talking to an owner, like, oh, well, so-and-so would be great for you. It's another piece of monetization for me, because the way I look at it is, I know exactly what it is that you do, and I'm actually bringing you a client that specifically needs your services and you're a perfect fit for. So I'm kind of like the marketer. I'm marketing to this broad spectrum of potential clients. I'm finding them, I'm vetting them for you, and then I'm sending them to you to kind of close. And so, that I do disclose that, I they pay me, but yeah. So, but they're getting qualified candidates that fits their market niche. And so everyone kind of wins. And that's kind of the way I monetize in one way, because, I'm not getting an 8% commission to facilitate to sell a business. On $1 million business, that's $80,000, right? So that's a lot of money. And so I'm asking for like a small couple $100 fee for those referrals, or, we can do like a closed contract, percentage of that or whatever. So I'm still getting a fraction of that, but at the end of the day, I'm putting more money back in the pocket of business owners, which I think is really the mission. So
I love that. Just that you've created a place where everybody can connect and everybody wins. That's an amazing place to have built. And because you're right, nobody wants to have 100 people calling me buy my business that have no money.
Right.
And just want to take it over and run it in the ground. That's crazy. It sounds like BizRetire is certainly something that the attorneys and service providers that listen to the show should check out to see if they can be an advisor for you, or if they're looking to sell their business, to definitely check out bizretire.com. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
This has been a really interesting conversation, and I think you've shared a lot of great tips and information about that. And I know my listeners are probably going to reach out to you or connect with you someplace. Where would be the best place to connect to you, learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn. I have an X account under the business name. I have a Facebook account under the business name. Those things I check a little less often. Like I said, most active on LinkedIn. But yeah, if you reach out to me any of those platforms, social media platforms, yeah, I'll check those inboxes and have a conversation. I'm pretty open to jump on a call and meet people. And again, my business is about connecting. So like I love meeting people and talking with everyone. So.
That's fantastic. We'll make sure that your LinkedIn is, as well as the website, is included in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. Head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.